Bantu Khumalo was a glue that held the community together and a peace ambassador. He was always collaborating and working with government to ensure development in the Amajuba district. He played a great role in the district house of Amajuba. The Department of Sports, Art and Culture has been assigned to work and support the Fraser family and give her a fitting send-off. The Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs worked with the family of the late Inkosi Khumalo to ensure that he was given a proper send-off. On behalf of the people of KwaZulu-Natal, we pay our sincere condolences to the Fraser family and that of Inkosi Khumalo and Isizwe Sakwa Khumalo. May their souls rest in peace. The Executive Council, on behalf of the people of KwaZulu-Natal, congratulate the Richards Bay FC, the Natal Rich Boys, on gaining promotion to the elite DStv Premiership. The EXCO extended best wishes to the player, the management, and staff for this monumental achievement and shining the bright spotlight on the talent that exists in our province. The achievement will inspire many of our young people and add more value to our sports tourism, social cohesion, and economic upliftment of our province. We have no doubt that the Richards Bay FC will represent the KwaZulu-Natal well and forever remain in the PSL, and we are sure that they will not sell their status this time. With regard to Africa Day celebration, the Executive Council noted and approved plans to host the 2022 Africa Day event on the 25th of May to be held in partnership with University of KwaZulu-Natal. This will mark the 59th anniversary since the formation of the Organization of African Unity, which later became African Union. Ladies and gentlemen, with regard to the forecast on weather for this coming weekend, the provincial government has received a severe weather warning notice from the South African Weather Services for the coming weekend. We are advised that if KwaZulu-Natal receive an additional 20 milliliters of rain, there is a potential of flooding as the ground may still be saturated following the recent heavy rains. We have been advised to expect snowfall and freezing temperatures. The EXCO will, through the Department of Culture and the MEC Sipho Muga, put all our disaster team on full alert. We urge our fellow citizens to be aware, especially those who may be in flood-prone areas. Everyone must exercise extreme caution, and we appeal to the people to be careful as they use self-heating mechanisms, including gas heaters and others. We have barely recovered from the recent floods, and many areas and infrastructure are still vulnerable, and we need to do everything possible to avoid disasters in rapid succession. With regard to the update on flood, it has been a month since the devastating flood occurred on the 11th of April, 2020. As the province, we are still undergoing unimaginable pain. The floods have unleashed havoc in our province and left an unthinkable path of destruction. We continue to express our condolences to the families, friends, and relatives who have lost loved ones. We have never demobilized the searches for those who are still missing. Our local search and rescue work continues as we remain hopeful that this will afford everyone final closure. In this presentation, we will cover the following areas: the substantial damage caused by the floods, the government response, the strategic and long-term rebuilding and reconstruction. Current indications are that the floods have affected a total of 85,280 people. A total of 448 fatalities are, in terms of the final report, confirmed to be the baseline official figure confirming the deceased. A total of 88 people are still reported missing, with 6,895 being homeless and 50 injured. A total of 27,069 houses were affected, with 8,584 houses totally destroyed and 13,536 partially destroyed. Indeed, these floods are the worst in the history and in history, and have unleashed the biggest humanitarian crisis and damage. The cost of the flood damage of the public infrastructure is officially estimated at 25 billion, with losses mainly in road, rail and bridges, housing, water, sanitation, electricity, agriculture, manufacturing. We still have the water service system still out of operation in areas such as Tongat, as they were seriously compromised by the floods. The province has been able to process burial support to all the deceased through the support of the Motsepe Foundation and AFPO. We're grateful and thankful to the work they are doing. We have one body of an undocumented Mozambican national that is uncollected. We are in touch with the family through the Mozambique Embassy as part of our daily liaison with close contact. With regard to government response, it is important that we care that unfortunate selective amnesia, especially among those who like to feast on the tragedy and suffering of our fellow citizens. From the day the floods occurred, government has been on the front line, activating and physically supporting our disaster operations. National government, led by His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa, has been with us since those difficult days. We were the first to evacuate school children, residents whose homes were flooded, bereaved families, and to clear roads and ensure that all areas were accessible. Even as our resources were overstretched, we ensured speedy intervention, seeing to it that no one is left behind in their hour of greatest need. We coordinated with other provinces, civil society, and NGOs to respond to this disaster. We continue to do so even today as we lead the implementation of our Phase 3 response plan. With regard to humanitarian relief, we have ensured that all affected persons are safe and that their basic needs are met daily. Currently, the province has 91 places that are being used as shelters. This is now down from 102, as some have been combined. And these are housing 7,297 people. The government and social partners provide meal, food packs, blankets, hygiene, and dignity pads, and psychosocial support services, among others. With regard to stabilization and recovery, as well as rehousing people and restoration of services, we have restored most of the services, especially electricity and water, and we are attending to the areas still experiencing challenges, especially due to the fact that the new infrastructure needs to be installed. We want to assure all affected that we are working hard to return normality in all water and sanitation systems. In the interim, we've increased the use of water tankers and are exploring all creative measures to restore all regular and normal supplies. We must, however, acknowledge, unfortunately, that water supply in many areas of our province have been affected by floods, including the quality of water in some areas. In this regard, there will be ongoing water restriction in all municipalities in varying quantities until we are back to normal. The areas most affected by poor river quality include amanzi mnyama, umbilo, umkhumbane, umngeni, umlasi, umhlatuzana, ispingo, and itoti. With regard to electricity, in eThekwini alone, we had in excess of 100 powers by the floods, leaving many parts of the city in darkness. To date, all high voltages substations have been restored, with some work still in progress on low and medium voltage faults. Power supply interruptions are being experienced in areas such as Gwandengezi, Zwelibovu, and Maran Ridge almost daily. This is caused by an electricity overload. The city has advised that work at Maran Ridge substation to resolve this problem is expected to be completed in the next 2 weeks. With regard to water, there is substantial progress in restoring water supply in areas where infrastructure was severely damaged. In eThekwini, where major disruption occurred, water supply has improved by 75 to 80% in most areas. There is still a challenge in some areas. As stated, the floods severely damaged the water treatment plant in Otongat. Major repair in this area are expected to take a few months and at an estimated cost of about 30 million, according to the eThekwini Metro engineers. As an interim solution, the municipality has intensified the provision of additional water tankers, and more static tanks will be added. There are also boreholes and package plants provided by NGOs, and we want to appreciate that. The eThekwini municipality is creatively reconfiguring the existing system and has constructed the emergency pipeline from Nyaninga Reservoir to Tongat South Reservoir, which is the area that accommodates Buffalo's Day. The necessary tie-in will be completed on the 16th of May. Access to piped water supply is expected to be available from today, the 19th of May, for the following areas: Tongat South Reservoir, Watsinya, the Pavaldia, the Gandinaka, Chamfords Hill, part of Tongat Central, which is the Tongat Central Business District, The restoration of supply to Otongati South areas was achieved due to the design nature of reticulation system and the proximity of available existing water point. The municipality further advises that supply to Otongati South areas will be intermittent as it must ration and be rationalized with other areas. And the following areas are feeding from Nyaninga, which is King Shaka, Dube Trade Port, Agri-Zone, Mount Moreland, and Shortlands. So there will be rotation in some of these areas. The municipality continue its plans to augment supply to more areas fed from the damaged Tongat water treatment works, and will be reporting in due course on update for the Hambanati, Emona, Mamba Ridge, and surrounding areas. Supply is still a challenge in the lower Molweni areas and Wushwini due to road and water infrastructure being destroyed. About 188 water tanks within eThekwini have been deployed as an interim measure to supply water in all affected areas. We have also started to put static tanks and drill boreholes in some areas. Supply to Ntuzuma and surrounding areas is still a challenge as well. The municipality continues to balance supply in these areas by rationing. Major pipeline replacement work that will secure supply is due for completion by week ending on the 20th of May. This will cover Inanda, Newtown B, Inanda, Newtown C, Nhlongwana, Ezimangweni, and Besta. The plan for the permanent reconstruction of the Otongati water treatment works, which is a permanent solution to the current challenge, is well underway. The municipality will give continuous updates in this regard. With regard to the implementation of immediate response by human settlement, service providers have been appointed for the construction of 1,810 temporary residential units across the province. To date, 77 of these are complete, and the progress is slowed by the suitability of land, as rebuilding cannot take place in some areas where communities were flooded. Units are being constructed in Molweni, Kwamakuta, and Inanda. These will soon be handed over to beneficiaries. In terms of land identification purposes, out of 64 mass care centers, 21 have been linked with a possible land parcels. At least 25 land parcels from the National Department of Public Works and the Provincial Departments of Public Works have been identified, totaling to 49 hectares. Detailed assessment currently is being undertaken on the 25 recommended properties. The South African National Defence Force is implementing Bailey bridges, while the Department of Transport in KwaZulu-Natal is leading a massive project called Valama Potholes, Fixing Potholes, which is the department is working with municipalities. While 630 schools were damaged, they have all been opened and are functioning following the floods, with temporal mobile classes having been provided. With regard to rehabilitation and reconstruction, building back better is the main focus of the province. Our province suffered 3 major setbacks within a short space of time. The first was COVID-19. The second was social unrest of July 2021, and then the April 2022 floods. According to the survey by the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, at least 826 companies were affected, and the cost of the damages to companies is estimated at 7 billion. Recently, President Cyril Ramaphosa, accompanied by key ministers, visited the province to engage with business on government's response to disaster. The top 3 districts that had the biggest impact were eThekwini municipality, with 239 companies responding, accounting for 50.6%, followed by iLembe with 87 companies accounting for 18.43%, and Ugu district with 45 companies accounting for 11.44%. These floods have impacted on about 31,220 jobs, with eThekwini accounting for 68% of jobs impacted. If we say jobs impacted, we mean that there are people who are unable to go to work now because their companies have not opened as yet. The damage to Toyota has resulted in their temporal closure in the Durban South Basin. An estimated 30,000 employees across the manufacturing industry are out of work currently. This means that employees could be without pay for approximately 3 months. Given the severity of damage at Toyota South Africa, we are, however, very encouraged by the decision and commitment of Toyota globally and other businesses to rebuild and build back better here in KwaZulu-Natal, despite the setbacks and losses to businesses which was caused by the floods. The recovery priorities include working with the private sector to ensure disaster-proof rebuilding processes. With regard to port operations, these are being improved, but are being affected by the rest of the network in the province. Currently, 2 lanes on Bayhead Road are open and operational, while the repairs to the Bayhead Road is being carried out. Unfortunately, rail in the port area is damaged and will be back in operation in July 2022. There is consideration to open a new road along the railway line to easy movement of cargo. Electricity and water challenges around the port are affecting many companies, and until there is progress on the road feeding into M7, we will be affected by costly delays in the port of Durban. We are, however, pleased to note that operations at King Shaka International Airport are back to full normal, with the Dube Trade Port providing water tankering by using its own equipment and sourcing water from their own dams. As a result, the much publicized water crisis at King Shaka International Airport, a strategic location especially for tourism sector, has now thankfully been resolved. With regard to the support to small businesses, we are also implementing measures to assist spaza shops in townships and implementing tourism sector interventions and SMMEs relief for infrastructure. For this purpose, the Department of Economic Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs is repurposing 67.5 million toward the SMMEs and Co-op Relief Fund as approved by the provincial treasury. The fund will prioritize township and rural businesses and informal traders in eThekwini, iLembe, King Cetshwayo, and Ugu district. In this regard, the Executive Council has approved the application to National Treasury for the release of 1 billion funding for immediate needs while awaiting the appropriation of the rest of the disaster fund. This is to cover the shelter support, human settlement interventions, water and sanitation interventions, road and relief. With regard to the disaster teams, we wish to thank all our patriotic disaster teams from across the provinces of South Africa, led by their premiers. We are grateful for your heroic acts of selflessness and sacrifice to support us in our greatest hour of difficulty and need. The South African Police Service, the military, expanded public works program participants, municipal employees continues to assist us as we work to rebuild, clean up, and continue search and rescue operation. The rebuilding effort will not be a government project alone, but the collective response led by all sectors under the leadership of our caring government. It is going to be a long road to full recovery, yet those with ears can hear the thankful appreciation of millions, businesses, communities, and many institutions who have felt government's consoling and reassuring presence during this time. It will be recalled that the province opened a dedicated bank account for donations under the account with Absa Bank, and the account is 4103831039. As at the 15th May 2022, the account had 125,000. Of this amount, 100,000 is specifically earmarked for the health department. The balance of 25,000 will be used toward the rebuilding. The bulk of donor funding has been sent directly to NGOs and can be accounted for by the NGOs. The Human Rights Commission and the United Nations Coordinating Office in South Africa will work with NGOs to ensure that citizens receive a report on who did what with donations earmarked for the people affected by floods in KwaZulu-Natal. There were many announcements made by various corporate companies and NGOs, but all of us will need to account and be transparent about what we did and how the money earmarked for flood victims in KwaZulu-Natal was spent, who was assisted, where, and what intervention. In closing, work continues for the restoration of what has been destroyed and to heal and rebuild together. We extend our gratitude to all the individuals, public and private institutions, businesses, the faith-based community, traditional leaders, NGOs, donors, as well as local and international diplomats who have assisted our province in its time of need. The initial application has been submitted to national government to assess the first tranche of funding. As this happened, work to restore services has continued by various institutions from their baseline budget. The situation has improved and is better than on that fateful day of the 11th April because of the work led by this government. I wish to reiterate once again that, as we said when this disaster tested us, this is a time to pull together and address the challenges in the interest of all those affected by the flood. Now is not a time for political grandstanding and divisiveness. We will weather this storm not by taking advantage of the plight of our vulnerable communities or by oversimplifying a difficult challenge which we must overcome. Neither should we allow laziness and incompetency to prolong the suffering of our citizens. We will not allow failures and incompetency to be explained, but we will not use lies to achieve political capital at the expense of the people. When we pull together, we will weather any storm. Let us harness this great spirit of collaboration and work together to rebuild better our beautiful province of KwaZulu-Natal, to its glory for the benefit of all her people. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Premier, for the comprehensive briefing, which, in my view, covers almost every angle. Let us open the opportunity to the colleagues for the questions. I will, for a change, start with the colleagues that are online. I don't know, is there anybody online who has asked any question? Yeah, you can press the microphone and take the question. Okay. Okay, why this? Okay, go ahead.
All right, so we have a question from Mary Papaya from Business Day. She'd like to know, will the Premier appeal to the national government for any short-term funding or support for the unemployed, or to actually assist businesses that have been affected by the floods? We also have another question from Katu, from the Mercury newspaper, Ketsu Kulu from the Mercury newspaper. She'd like to know, will all displaced families be provided with homes, or will some receive monetary compensation? And then secondly, how long are displaced families expected to remain in shelters? And then lastly, we have one from the Citizen newspaper from Faisal, and his is quite generic. We'd just like to know, will 40,000 people across the province who are still waiting for government assistance after the floods, and how will they be assisted?
40,000. Okay. Thank you very much. Honourable Premier, if you want to start with those online from Mary, Ketu, and Faisal.
Maybe if we can repeat the last one, Faisal.
The last one is asking about the 40,000 people that are said to be homeless and the support they will receive as to when they are going to move into houses.
Well, starting with this question of the people who are homeless, all of them, as we have said, they are in 91 shelters currently. All of them will be provided with houses. I wouldn't want to confirm the number that there are 40,000 as he's saying, but all of those who are in shelters will be provided with support. And I think that takes us to the question by Katie, whether they will be receiving houses. Yes, they will receive houses in a form of temporary residential units. These temporary residential units are of a quality, and they are guaranteed, I think, for 3 to 5 years, but they will be integrated in the forthcoming projects of housing so that they get permanent houses. I think the question by Mary Papa is very important. We have been engaged already by the private sector as well as the unions on how to deal with the situation. The current approach maybe will be to look firstly on tests to keep employees at least having some legal income up until they are back at work. Companies have to also be supported, but the first point for companies will be their insurances. And then I think there are grants also we announced, or support we announced, that comes from the Department of Trade nationally. And the department is offering the support in terms of restoration or rebuilding, and as well as expansion. So that was announced, and we can provide that support. That is what we are doing with regard to the business community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Prima, just take the colleagues inside the house. Any question? I think in that order, or maybe in Kalen and then Namando or Manyanga. Starting with you.
Okay, my name is Busi Kumana from SAPC News. Okay, my name is Busi Kumana from SAPC News. I'd like to know because it seems as if the province of KwaZulu-Natal is very prone to natural disasters. What is the government's plan in terms of ensuring that those who are currently still in low-lying areas are being moved from those areas, because there are thousands of them, and unfortunately, the floods. I mean, they are currently bearing the brunt of the floods. Most of them are in those areas such as Inanda, Moloini, Chelinyama, and those areas that are affected the most. And many of them are living in low-lying areas. What's the government's plan there? And also perhaps the time frame of, I'm not sure if this question has already been answered or yet. The plan in terms of those who were displaced by the floods, who are currently staying in shelters, is there any time frame as to when is government going to build these thousands of houses to accommodate them?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Letty Omdul from ENCA. Premier, you've already touched a bit on the allocation of funds for those people that were affected by the floods. But I would just like clarity on exactly how will you monitor how these funds are being allocated for each and every person that was affected, because there's been some reports about funding being stolen and all those things. So I'd like to get clarity on that. And also on Tuesday, I had an interview with the MEC for Human Settlements in regards to those people that are still living in community halls. I think that's been the focus today. We spoke to various people who are located there, and they are saying that they haven't been told on when they will be moved. They are concerned about health issues since there are growing numbers of COVID-19, and they are asking when exactly will they be moved. So basically, a time frame on that. The MEC did say that in 10 days' time they will start moving people from community halls.
Thank you. Sumo.
From Eyewitness News from Eyewitness News Premier. We've heard in the recent budget votes that departments will have to reprioritize some of the funding that is allocated to them, but there was also the issue of the 1 billion grants from government. Do we know when, Premier, that money will be coming to the province? Thank you.
Thanks. It's Kapil from News 24. I think I'm pretty well covered with the questions about the shelters. I mean, also I think we're just looking for a timeline for that. But I mean, last week, Friday, when Mayor Mxolisi Kondo was in Mulweni, there was quite a few issues, like Letiwe mentioned, with accusations from the community of theft, specifically from the ward committees, like the ward committee keeping certain items for their people, and then the people in the main community hall are not really receiving anything. How much of attention are we giving those sort of instances? Because that's one instance where the mayor just went there to hand over goods and then this whole thing unraveled. I mean, who knows where else is. So what are we doing to try and prevent that sort of thing and just get people back into their homes? Thanks.
Thank you. Karin.
Karinda from Newsroom Africa. My first question is on our weather warning system. Minister Barbara Creasy yesterday told our channel that our infrastructure needs to be upgraded. So for our province, have you heard anything about our weather warning systems that need to be upgraded? Then, Premier, there's been a call for you to release 300 million rand in contingency reserve, the call was made by the DA. What would be your response to that? And finally, Premier, are you happy with the way that National Disaster Management has been assisting KZN? It's been a month now. Looking back at the month that's passed, what do you think they could have done better for our province? Thank you.
Thank you. Colleague, intern, welcome.
Thank you, Papa. Kamarada Musandi Lewango from DUT School of Journalism. I have two questions. One, do we have other plans as a province to source more funding? Given the reality that the 1 billion is now might not necessarily be enough. This morning, Obabu Deputy Mayor from Italy, when he was interviewed by NCA, he said they've already used 1.7 billion moving funds from their other budget votes to accommodate only infrastructure in Etegui, which gives an indication that the 1 billion that is we are eagerly waiting for is definitely not sufficient to have plans for. We had COVID-19 relief funds. You speak about township SMMEs as well being prioritized. I can tell you that Gadamboza, Emlazi, Imbali, and the townships, small businesses, during the COVID relief, we did not get any of those funds. Whether they are registered SMME or not, but we did not in the townships. Now my question is, do you have plans to apply this differently this time around from what we've previously experienced with COVID-19 relief? Thank you.
Thank you. And the last question over to the Premier.
No, thanks. I think let me start with the question from SABC News, Vusi Kumar. Yes, the province is prone to natural disasters, and we have firstly started working on a comprehensive program on climate change, which look on identifying threats that are caused by climate change. So that is the mitigating approach, encourage less pollution, waste management be improved, and all of those systems. We are moving toward the adoption of the land management framework, which is a policy that will guide all of us. I think just before the floods, we convened a summit, which was convened by the provincial government in Durban Ice Rink, where we were discussing the issue of land management in township and even in rural areas. And that was also attended by even traditional leaders. So in that conference, what we were discussing is that residential areas should be properly identified and be areas which are secured. And in that discussion, we said we should now take into cognizance that the province is prone to disasters. So there is work that we are doing, as I'm referring, not only because of the recent floods, but even before that, we had started doing work. That also needs to guide the municipalities, that we can no longer build houses in areas that are prone to disasters, in wetlands or at the bank of the rivers. So that calculation and that plan is on place, and we will continue to do that. With regard to monitoring the allocation of funds, I think you are correct. Firstly, there is funding that comes from the government, and that funding will be monitored by structures in the province. We have said that nothing should be issued, no contract should be issued without a proper assessment by the provincial treasurer. So that is the first. But on top of that, we said the services that are provided should be monitored. And we have said institutions such as Human Rights Commission and Public Protector should always monitor whether, if we say we are providing food packs, are that provided in quality and in the exact quantity that is required. So outside government itself, we have partnered with such institutions, the Chapter 9 institutions. We've had about 2 meetings with the Human Rights Commission and strengthening our engagement on monitoring. We must monitor the allocation, but we must monitor the quality of service that is rendered. Now, I think, let me then rush to answer another question because it is linked to this one. It's a question about what happened by ward committees. I think that is something that must be monitored. Our approach has been that let us not provide services to committees, but deliver services direct to the needy communities. If you have an NGO that wants to provide support, the councillor, the ward committee should coordinate. And coordination does not mean they should receive, but they should say there are people who are in shelters, and these shelters are here, and then go with the sponsors or those who are donating direct to the affected communities. We don't want to have middle people who will mediate and mediate. Let those who are providing support go straight to those who are affected. And that has been our approach. Whenever there's a donation, we say, there's a donation, okay, this is the area that is not yet covered. Please go to this area. The number of people are these are the needs. Some will say, okay, I've got blankets. We then say, no, these shelters have been covered. Take blankets to these areas that have not been covered. We will then identify those areas, not to collect for our own. I think what we have collected are things that have been donated, like the ones donated by the Free State government, which we are going to be taking to shelters. And once they are given to us, those that comes to government, they are then given and managed by the Department of Social Development. It is the only department that provides humanitarian support such as your food, food packs, clothes, and all of that. So that's how we're trying to manage that. With regard to budget prioritization, yes, we are compelled to do so. But right now, as I've indicated, we're working based on the baselines of each department if there is a need for water and we see that the municipality is stretched, so COGTA can intervene based on its own budget and reprioritize based on its budget and then provide support to that municipality. When are we going to get this 1 billion? This 1 billion comes in a form of separate support or separate grants, in a form of humanitarian support, in a form of emergency services such as water and others. So it is based on application that is made either by municipalities or provincial departments. Ours has been to ensure that we consolidate a comprehensive budget based on the damage incurred. So we have submitted that to the National Disaster Management Center, and that is the platform that have then to say, this is the amount that has been submitted by the province. They will then take that to the Treasury and then discuss at a national level. Are we going to get other source of funding? We are trying. We don't want to be given money as government, but we want that money to go direct. For instance, let me make one example. The gaming industry in KwaZulu-Natal have came on board and say they want to donate. And we said to the gaming industry, no, don't give us money, but go and fix schools. And the Department of Education will say, this is the number of schools that have been damaged, and then they will go, the gaming industry will go and repair those schools. We are also approaching a number of other institutions, including those that are in Africa that collaborate with us. We are not yet going to name those, but once we agree on their support, we will be able to say these are the institutions that have supported us. As I'm saying, gaming industry, I'm saying this because they have made an agreement. Once they finalize that they are now funding, we will be able to say in KwaZulu-Natal, the betting and gaming industry is supporting us. They will build schools. The amount is this. These are the schools that they will be building. So we want that cooperation. We don't want funds for government, but we want it. Those who donate to government also are able to tell us. For instance, we have told you that in our account for donations, there is 125,000. And one donor who donated 100,000 said, I want this donation to go to this service. Said, I want this donation to go to health services. And we are going to ensure that that is done as such, because we must work taking into cognizance the views of the people, because some are donated given their own assessment and priorities. With regard to Karinda, the improving systems, you are correct. As the minister said, we are working on improving the warning systems. We do have capacity to a certain extent, but I don't believe we have reached a point where we are able to issue an alert and be able to say these are areas that have a potential to be affected, rather than to say generally these are districts. I'm sure you have received the alert about the weather for this coming weekend, and it identified KwaZulu-Natal, some part of inland and some part of the coastal districts. So we would want to have a system where we are also able to say, hey, councillors, can you do 1, 2, 3 in these communities? And I believe Minister Chris, who has been very supportive in linking us with relevant authorities, I think that's what she meant. With regard to the call for the province to release the emergency reserves, or we will consider that. We don't need to be reminded or called for. We are prioritizing. We are prioritizing. And once we spend everything and you exhaust everything you have, the future will catch up with you and you will be found wanting. We are not against releasing some funds from the reserves in the province, but also we are working according to the needs. I think the last one is regarding to townships. Now, Mapoloba, you are asking this and you say you didn't get it. You know, when you ask a question as if you are directly involved, we take that the approach is that people must apply in the Department of Economic Development, Tourism, and Environmental Affairs. There are offices of the department in each district, but in the website also, they can as well apply. So we are open for that. In case people are not successful, they can also further inquire on what made them not to be successful on their applications. Thank you. I think we have been detailed enough.
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Premier. Karinda, let me quickly dive you and then request the Honorable Premier to summarize this.
I just had a question about looking back at national disaster management. I just wanted to and looking back if we could have done anything better.
Well, I think the response has been well coordinated. There might be area of concerns from others. It is something else to talk from what you are observing than to talk from the actual implementation approach. And therefore, I think the national government has been with us. What maybe we need to do is to ensure that government systems are able to respond with speed. And that is not the blame for the national, but the systems themselves. How do we ensure that we put in place systems that will be able to assist timelessly? For instance, you would say there is a need to render a particular service, and that is not, that service need to be sourced from the private sector or anywhere, and then the government process will take time. It's not a fault of national only, it affects all of us. So the systems must be put in place in case we are faced with challenges of disaster. How do we improve systems to respond quickly, but also be able to have checks and balance? Thanks. Ngifisa ukubingelela kubo bonke, especially abaqosheli nabasebenzi emkhakheni wemedia. Namuhla si presenta i-progress endleleni esidila ngayo ne-disaster, kodwa futhi sifisa ukuthi sidlulise izinqumo ze-Executive Council yayizolo. Sifisa ukuqala ngokuzwekalisa ukuzwelana nemndeni, umndeni wakwa-Fraser ngokudlula emhlabeni kuka-Deborah Fraser, obaziwa kakhulu emculweni wezokholo, nomuntu osebenze kakhulu njengomunye wabantu abazigqajayo nge-South Africa nobunye babantu base-South Africa. Umnyango wakwa-Sports, Arts and Culture uyasebenzisana nomndeni wakwa-Fraser uqinisekisa ukuthi unikezelwa ukubekwa ngendlela efanele nendlela ehlonipha nomsebenzi awenzile. Sizwakalisa futhi ukuzwelana nomndeni wenkosi uKhumalo wasemajuba odlulile emhlabeni. Siyamazi inkosi uKhumalo ngeqhaza lakhe ekwakheni ukuthula nasekuzameni ukuthi abamsane uqinisa ukusebenzisana between uhulumeni nobukhosi ukuze kwazi ukulethwa intuthuko ebantwini. Sidlulisa amazwi okhalalisa sibongela iRichards Bay FC ngokunqoba kwayo ikwazi ukudlulela esigabeni esiphezulu se-DStv Premiership la okucaca khona ukuthi amateam aKwaZulu Natal aya increase azoba abamaningi asemahlanu manje. Siyayibongela iRichards Bay FC. Siyathemba ukuthi lokhu kuzokhulisa ithalente nekhono labantu baKwaZulu Natal abasebasha abakwezemidlalo. Kubuye futhi kukhulise itourism ngekwezemidlalo. Njengohulumeni waKwaZulu Natal sifisa ukudlulisa umbiko oshoyo ukuthi abesimo sezulu basinikeze imbiko ethi lempela sonto esiya kuyo ingase ibe impela sonto engeyinhle engeza namakhaza amaningi futhi ize nezimvula kwezinye indawo. Ngalokho siyanxusa abantu kuzo zonke indawo ukuthi babheke ukuthi baseyindaweni eyiphephile neyindawo la ukuthi uma line kakhulu zingabi ukuthi zinga affectwa kakhulu isimo semvula nezikhukhula. Siyagcizelela kubantu abakhe ngasemfuleni nalabo abahlala eindaweni esibizwa ngama wetland ukuthi banakekele kulempela sonto ukuthi baba seyindaweni eyiphephile. Kusukela ngomhla ka-11 ka-April kulonyaka iKwaZulu Natal ibhekane nesimo esinzima kwalahleka abantu abaningi. Ngokwezibalo eziqinisekisiwe abantu abangu-85,280 ababe affected. Abantu abangu-448 bashiyile emhlabeni. U-88 wabantu waduka awukatholakali kanti abantu abawu-6,895 basala bedengwane bengenawo amakhaya. Njengamanje umonakalo uthi umubalwa wonke ufinyelele ku-25 billion. Lona umonakalo othinta imigwaqo, railway nama-bridge, izindlu, amanzi, ugesi nokuthuthwa kwendle, indawo ze-agriculture neyinkampani ezihlukahlukene. Abantu abaningi njengongishilo abanye sebetholakele khona bangakatholakali. Njengohulumeni siyaqhubeka uqinisekisa ukuthi sinakekela bonke abantu abasale dengwane ngenxa yalezi zikhukhula. Njengamanje sineyindawo ezu-91 la okuhlaliswe khona abantu abasale bengenamakhaya. Abantu abawu-7,297 bahleli kulezi indawo bayalekeleleka besupportwa uhulumeni neinhlangano eziyimele ngokuthola ukudla, bathole ingubo, bathole izinto zokugeza, bathole futhi nokulekeleleka ngokuthi bathole i-counseling. Njengamanje singaqinisekisa ukuthi uhlelo lokubuyisa amanzi eindaweni eziningi lubonakala luqhubeka noma sazi ukuthi kwezinye indawo akakabuyi kahle. Indawo ezishayeke kakhulu indawo ezifana noThongathi la amanzi ephazamiseke khona kakhulu. Kodwa siyafisa ukusho ukuthi amanzi njengamanje especially eThekwini la obekushayeke khona kakhulu asebuyile and isupply iko 75% noma kwezinye indawo kusenziwa lokho okuthiwa i-rotation. Zingaphezulu ka-100 or angaphezulu ka-100 ama-power station alimala. Iningi lawo selibuyiselwe seliyasebenza. Siyazi futhi ukuthi ey'ndaweni ey'se-West ey'fana noNdengezi, Zwelibovu and Maran Ridge ugesi usaphazamiseka usuku nosuku and lokho kukhandwa ukuthi kune-overload. Umasipala usebenza ngokushesha ukulungisa ke lesisimo. Ey'ndaweni ezakhela uthokathe bengenawo amanzi siyazi ukuthi ukhona umsebenzi owenziwayo uqinisa ukuthi amanzi ayatholakala ngokufaka ipayipi eliphuthumayo lisuka kwiNyaninga Reservoir liya kuTongat South Reservoir ukhava indawo ezifana Buffelsdale nezinye. Siyazi futhi ukuthi amanzi akatholakali kahle ey'ndaweni ezakhele ontuzuma and umsebenzi uyaqhutshezwa ukuthi usha umhla ka-20 May zonke lezi indawo ezakhela intuzuma ey'fana no-Newtown, oNhlungwana, oZimangweni, noBester amanzi ebesebuyisiwe. For abantu bakithi abahleli kulezi indawo esithi ama-temporal shelters, ngingaqinisekisa ukuthi sisohlelweni lokwakha ama-temporal residential unit angu-1,810 kwiKwaZulu Natal yonke. Njengamanje u-77 usuwakhiwe. Siyaphuthuma ukuthi kwakhiwe kuzo zonke indawo ukuze bonke abantu abahleli kuzindawo zomphakathi bakwazi ukuthola indawo ezikahle zokuhlala la bazokwazi khona ukuthi bahlale ngendlela la imndeni ihlala ngayodwana. Lesimo seyimvula nezikhukhula ziphazamise kakhulu umnotho. Inkampani ezu-826 zi-affecteke kakhulu. Umonakalo wenzeke enkampanini ucela ku-7 billion. Inkampani eyikhandleke kakhulu eyiseThekwini, iLembe nakuGu district. Inkampani ezinkulu ezikwi-South Basin zi-affected. Ngingasho ukuthi isibalo mhlambe esicela ngaphezulu ka-30,000 wabasebenzi abakulokhu esithi ukukhiqiza manufacturing industry isikakhulukazi kwi-South Basin abasebenzi and abanye bangase beyithole bengasebenzi for izinyanga ezingabantathu ukunika lezi inkampani ezikhona ithuba lokulungisa umonakalo. Lokhu kubalwa inkampani ezifana no-Toyota South Africa nezinye. Siyabonga kodwa ukuthi zonke lezi inkampani ziyimisela ukwakha kabusha zakhe khona labe zikhona. Siyabhekisana ukuthi inengenziwa ukwazi ukulekelela ukwakha kwalezi inkampani nokuthi kulekelelwe abasebenzi ngalesi sikhathi esinzima. Siyazi futhi ukuthi nosomabhizinisi abancane bashayekile. Siyazama ukuthi through i-Department yawa Economic Development labo somabhizinisi bakwazi ukusupporteka. Yingakho i-Department reprioritizer u-67 million ozobhekiswa kuma-SMMEs ey'ndaweni ezifana neTheku, iLembe, iKingcitshwayo noGu ezikhahlamezeke kakhulu. Siyafisa-ke ukubonga kubo bonke laba bathe bayikhandla, especially abasebenza kwima-disaster centers, amaphoyisa, iningi labo obekuyibe bebebheka abantu abadukile, ezokuvikela i-defense, abasebenza bakwi-Public Works Program, Extended Public Works Program, abasebenzi bakahulumeni kuma-department nakomasipala. Sifisa ukubonga kakhulu ukuzinikela kwabo. Sibonga futhi iqhaza nokusebenzisana okuhle ne-private sector imboni ezizimele. Sibonge abamasonto, ubuholi bendabuko, ama-NGOs nabo bonke abantu asebethe badonate ukulekelela kulesimo esibhekene naso. Siyabonga.
Thank you very much, Honorable Premier. With that, we come to the end of it. I think Mr. Ndaluso,
his question is already answered on the statement. Chris, your question is answered on the statement. Thank you very much, Honorable Premier, and thank you, colleagues.
Thank you.
oh, hey, come on. Angubona yasengibhenga la. Mana wala remove that. Amalwele, oh,
No. Like flood, those who are living on floodplains.